Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Ramadan Radio Wolves. You are tuned into FYI, your go-to source for community empowerment and information. As always, you're tuned into Ramadan Radio Wolves 87.8 FM. I'm your host, Alvina Ali, and today we have a very special guest joining us in the studio. Now, please welcome Sunita Bhanga, who is the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Lead Midwife at New Cross Hospital. Now, with her extensive experience and dedication, Sunita works tirelessly to improve inequalities in maternity care and supports families who face various challenges during pregnancy, including language barriers and additional needs. Now, if you have a question about a topic being discussed, feel free to call into the studio on 01902 972 150 or send us a message at 07 440 420 432. So today we will be delving into the vital support groups that Sunita runs and caters for to the diverse communities here in Wolverhampton. So let's dive right in and learn more about the support groups and resources available to expectant mothers and families in Wolverhampton. Sunita, welcome to Ramadan Radio Wolves FYI.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alvina. What an introduction.
Thank you. Right. Okay. So, Sunita, can you tell our listeners more about the Sahara Maternity Support Group, especially, and why should women attend and the services that it offers to pregnant families in Wolverhampton?
Yes, of course. So the Sahara Support Group I set up around 15 months ago now. So I've been in post about 18 months, just over. And when I came into Wolverhampton, I previously worked in Birmingham. When I came to Wolverhampton and started this role, I discovered that there were lots of problems. There were lots of inequalities that pregnant women face in Wolverhampton, such as deprivation. We needed to use food banks for some ladies, baby banks. There's lots of diverse populations in Wolverhampton. There's a huge amount of languages that are spoken in Wolverhampton. We've had lots of migration into Wolverhampton also from different backgrounds. We've got asylum seekers from all different countries. So we meet a lot of pregnant women in maternity who have lots of problems going on in their own lives. So we set up the Sahara Maternity Support Group to help support those women. So we obviously provide lots of information and education about around pregnancy. So we have our online antenatal classes, if you like.
Yeah.
And they're great for people that speak English or, they've got a device, they've got access to the internet, they've got a tablet, they can use Wi-Fi, they can access that support.
Yeah.
For some women, that wasn't working. So during COVID as well, especially post-pandemic, what we realised was there was a large group of women that didn't actually get any antenatal education. So what I decided to do was set up the Sahara Maternity Support Group and start to offer the same programme that's available to our women in English, but do it in different languages.
Yeah.
My background, I'm Punjabi, so obviously I can speak Punjabi fluently. If there's any ladies that come along that speak Urdu, Punjabi, Hindi, I can kind of make myself understood to them. They're able to ask questions and they found it really useful. For the other languages, Romanian, Polish, we've got lots of women that speak many, different languages. So for those ladies, obviously I'll get interpreters on the phone. If it's one-to-one, some of the support, sometimes it's face-to-face, but mainly it's over the phone.
Yeah.
And a lot of women have found that very useful, as opposed to getting very little or no support in their own language. In the Sahara Support Group, what they access is antenatal education, but also just somewhere to socialise.
Okay.
So the classes are every Monday at the Bob Jones Community Hub, which is in Blakenhall. So 10 o'clock till 12 o'clock every Monday, apart from bank holidays, obviously. The building's closed. I can't be open when they're not open.
Yeah.
But other than that, the sessions run every single week, and the women do find it quite useful. So they come along and they meet each other, they make friends there, they can speak to other women in their own language, they support each other as well. It's just a really good way of breaking down some of those barriers that they face in the community.
Right. Okay. So, again, your posters are quite openly advertised, aren't they, for people to attend the Sahara group? So what are the important symptoms of concerns that pregnant women should be aware of?
So many women think that you only go to the hospital when you go into labour, especially first-time mums. If you haven't had a baby before, sometimes they're not aware that there are other things to look out for in pregnancy. And if, should you have any of these symptoms, you do need to be aware of them for a start, and know also that you must be ringing triage at the hospital where you book to have your baby.
Yeah.
So things like headaches and blurred vision, if you get those together with epigastric pain, that could indicate to us that actually your blood pressure is starting to rise. If your waters break suddenly, again, a lot of women think that your waters only break just about, when you're about to have your baby. That's not true. Sometimes they can break early in pregnancy, and your waters keep the baby safe. So we need to make sure they're always intact.
Yeah.
So if your waters break at any point, if you have any vaginal bleeding at all in pregnancy, that's always of concern. So we'd always need to see you then. But there's another condition called cholestasis, which presents itself by itching of the skin. So predominantly on the palms of your hands and the soles of your feet. If you do develop severe itching on your hands and feet that doesn't stop, it doesn't go away, probably more pertinent at night. But generally, if it's a persistent itch, we'd need to see you for that. Most importantly, it's your baby's movements. So, again, people used to say things like, oh, as the baby gets bigger, or when you're nearly due, because there's less room in your stomach, your baby's movements change, they slow down because there's less room in your tummy. That's not true at all. It's very important that whatever pattern of movement that you have with your baby, that you have that every single day.
Okay.
If you notice at any point that your movements are starting to slow down, or you can't feel anything, it's been a few hours, if your baby's normally very active during the day and suddenly it's very slow or very erratic compared to normal, any change in your movement, and that's the main thing that we need to emphasise here, it's not just a decreased amount of baby's movements, it is any change that you notice. So if you do notice any of these concerns, in particular your movements, you must contact triage at your hospital where you book to have your baby. Obviously, Wolverhampton, that ideally should be or would be New Cross Hospital. But some ladies live in Wolverhampton, but they might be booked elsewhere to have the baby. Dudley, Sandwell, Walsall. So wherever you book to have your baby, if you've got any of these concerns, which we call the important symptoms, just give triage a call and they will bring you in and get you assessed if they need to.
Wow, excellent. Now, that's incredibly valuable support there, Sunita. What about families? How can families support new mothers-to-be? Again,
just being aware of those symptoms as well, and also just encouraging mums, mothers-to-be. Sometimes, the family plays a huge role, especially with things like breastfeeding. We often find that if there's any concerns, a lot of people are quite quick to sometimes try and be helpful. They are trying to be helpful, but they might suggest things like, oh, let's try giving the baby some formula, give the baby a bottle, when ideally, if the mother wants to breastfeed, she may need support with that. But also the support groups, for example, Sahara, the group that I run, I'm more than happy for parents to come along to those groups and also hear the advice and information that I am sharing with the women, just so they're aware that this is the current advice.
Yeah.
Just to familiarise themselves with the information so they're not saying different things. I've been a community midwife in the past and I've often gone into people's homes and I've maybe given safe sleeping advice. We're talking about making sure the baby's always asleep on their back, with the feet to the bottom of the Moses basket or cot.
Yeah.
And mums, mother-in-laws, they might be there and they'll say things like, oh, but the baby, I've done it for years, I always put the baby to sleep on the stomach or on the side.
Yeah.
Which may have been acceptable at the time
At the time,
they had
yes.
their children.
Yeah.
But with the increase of sudden infant death that we have, cot death, the other name for it. With concerns like that, the advice is very much that we must always try to put babies on their back with the feet to the bottom of the Moses basket.
Okay, yeah. And
just sharing that sort of information and not wearing hats inside. We want the baby to regulate their own temperature and not be overwrapped. And our Asian families are quite renowned for really heating up babies, keeping them warm,
Yeah.
put a hat on, lots of blankets.
Yeah.
So it's just explaining these simple things that can actually help to keep your baby safe and well. And often families sometimes need to hear that information, because when the mother is saying that, they often sometimes think, oh, she doesn't know, it's her first baby. And they're actually trying to be helpful, but they're giving perhaps incorrect advice or maybe old advice, which would have been the correct advice at that time. But things change and we need to keep moving and keep evolving and making sure that we are all doing the same thing to protect our mothers and babies.
Yeah, no, you're right there, because my niece gave birth as well to a beautiful daughter, and like I was quite surprised exactly how things have changed from our times and stuff. So it's always best to know. And what I want to point out is I have got the poster here, which is the Sahara Maternity Support Group. What we'll do is we'll put these available here at the radio studio. If anybody does want any copies of that, where can they get information such as things like this?
Yeah, you can actually go to the Bob Jones Community Hub. The room is funded by Positive Participation. They're a mental health group that have done lots of work in Wolverhampton as well. So they're aware. You can ask your midwife. So your midwife will be able to signpost you to the group. It is a drop-in, by the way. So it's not something that you have to turn up to every single week. Some ladies come when they can. Other ladies are at college some weeks, and they come when they're on holidays or when they're finished working and they're on the maternity leave. It's completely up to you. Any Monday between 10 and 12, I'll be there regardless.
Yeah.
So if there's any ladies that you know that are pregnant, please let them know. Ask them to speak to their midwife. All the midwives know. They send referrals to me. I normally contact the women and just give them a personal invitation as well.
Yeah.
Might be a phone call, it might be a text message. It depends if they answer the phone and how I can get a hold of them, really. But I do try and just introduce myself and just invite them, so they don't feel so apprehensive about just dropping in and turning up. But they're very welcome.
That's great. Now, Sunita, another aspect that we could delve into is pregnancy during the Ramadan month. So can you share any advice or considerations for expectant mothers during Ramadan?
Yeah, firstly, as we're aware, according to Islamic law, I believe pregnant women are not expected to fast during pregnancy.
That's correct.
So bear that in mind. But having said that, I was just saying earlier that I do meet a lot of women that do actually want to do the fast in
That was quite surprising to hear.
Yeah. So if you are choosing to do the fast, it's just about making sure that you're eating safely when you can eat. So making sure you're getting a really good balanced diet. So, make sure you're having little and often to eat in the window when you can eat in the evenings. So lots of fluids, not all in one go. We don't want to overindulge all at once and then you're struggling during the night. And then, you want to make sure you're having lots of fibre.
Yeah.
Iron, fruit, vegetables, have high calorific foods such as yogurt, cheese, nuts, avocado, as opposed to really light sort of salads and stuff. Although you need that for your fibre, again, it's about that balance. Try not to eat fried food. I know we're quite good at having saucy,
pakore, you name it.
all the Asian food, but they do make you feel quite sluggish. They they're often high in fat, high in sugar, any processed food, anything like that you eat. It does make your energy actually go lower and you can actually feel dehydrated because of the high salt content as well in these foods. So try to avoid too much salt, too much caffeine. Just try and have regular fluids as much as you can. And what we're actually trying to do is avoid dehydration.
Yeah. So
the signs of dehydration, just so you're aware, you might feel very thirsty, you can start to feel dizzy, your urine, the colour changes. So as opposed to a normal yellowish looking urine, it might go very dark.
Yeah.
You might feel very tired, and again you might start to have headaches because your body is telling you it needs food and drink. So those are the signs of dehydration. So just look after yourself, really. Ideally, as we're aware, you don't have to fast. So if you can not fast, that's probably in your best interest and that of your baby. Especially if you've got any medical conditions such as diabetes. If you're pregnant and you've got diabetes, it's definitely not a good idea to be fasting because obviously we need to make sure your blood sugars are in balance.
Of course, yeah.
So if you're fit and well and you're really wanting to do the fast, then just make sure you do it safely.
Right, so just to reiterate there, now according to Islamic teachings, listeners, pregnant women are exempt from fasting if it poses a risk to their health or the health of their unborn child. Now, the well-being of the mother and the child takes precedence over fasting. the obligation. So therefore, it's generally recommended for pregnant women to consult, like Sunita said, with a knowledgeable religious scholar or healthcare professional to determine whether fasting is safe for them during pregnancy. Now, if fasting poses a risk to the health of the mother or the unborn child, there are alternatives in Islam, such as fidya, which is feeding a needy person for each missed day of fasting, or qada, which is making up missed fasts at a later time. So you have these two options as well. So these can be pursued as alternatives to fulfill the religious obligations. Ultimately, the decision to fast during pregnancy should be made with careful consideration of one's health and well-being. Now, that said, we have got a listener's question for you, Sunita. And this one says, I'm expecting my first child and feeling overwhelmed by all the information out there. How can Sunita's support groups help me navigate through this?
Okay, so how many weeks is this lady? She said or
She
not?
hasn't said.
Okay,
no. She's expecting her first child,
okay,
so
not to worry.
yeah.
Okay, so when you go to see your midwife, it's normally probably about a 20-minute appointment, which isn't long enough to have a really nice discussion and discuss your concerns. So in that 20 minutes, your midwife, she'll need to do your physical check, so your blood pressure, check your urine. If you're over 24 weeks, she'll need to measure your tummy, listen to baby, do all her documentation. So that's quite a lot to get into a 20-minute appointment. The Sahara Maternity Support Group is 2 hours, and you will have my attention.
Wow, that's excellent.
So I definitely go around everybody that's there and make sure we go through any personal concerns that they've got.
Yeah.
Sometimes people have come along and they don't want to ask any personal questions at that point. And if they're all quite early on, we'll talk about diet, we'll talk about looking after themselves in pregnancy, we'll talk about vaccines, what they should be having, what's offered to them, what they would like to have. We talk about the scans, the blood tests. Have they had everything? Do they understand what the scans are for? All the blood tests that they have, the booking bloods, the results. So we'll go through all of that information. If they're further along, we'll talk about movements. We'll talk about if they're, in the third trimester, we might do a discussion around labour, talk about pain relief, what the options are in labour for pain relief, how will they recognise that they're going into labour. What they can do to help themselves while they're at home before they go into hospital. The different ways you can give birth, the different places you can give birth, because it's not just only in the hospital. If you would like a home birth, that's possible as long as you're low risk. You can give birth on the midwife-led unit. If you're high risk, then it is advised that you'll be on the delivery suite. It depends if you're consultant-led care or midwife-led care. But all these things, it's more of a personal discussion when you come to the group, because you can ask me what's going on with you and we can have that one-to-one discussion. And often somebody else might ask a question, or you might. And when I answer it in the group format, it kind of gets other people thinking as well, I didn't think about that, I've learned something. Or it might prompt them to also ask another question. But it's just, I think the key is education. The more you can educate yourself in pregnancy, especially with it being your first baby, the more you know, the better equipped you are to be able to prepare yourself for pregnancy, for labour, for birth, for motherhood.
Yeah, that's really good, because I love the idea of the face-to-face support that is offered. And again, if somebody doesn't feel comfortable speaking in a group, are you happy to do like just a one-to-one?
Yeah, no problem. I've often rang ladies. Sometimes, they'll ask questions at the end, and then I've only got the room booked. Positive participation pay for 2 hours for me to use the room. So often it's booked after that, so I can't stay over after midday. But, it's not a problem. I can give you a telephone call. We can use interpreters if we need to.
Okay.
So we can have that one-to-one discussion. And that's where my role is different from your normal community midwife, because it is very much aimed at meeting the needs of people who, the needs aren't always met through the normal care pathway.
Right. I've got another listener's question. This reads, I'm pregnant and fasting during Ramadan. We've already covered this. They might have missed it. Yes. But this says, can Sunita provide any advice on how to ensure a healthy pregnancy while observing Ramadan?
Yeah. So the diet we have already discussed.
Yes.
But other than that, always obviously make sure that you're taking any pregnancy multivitamins. So when you are allowed to have your tablets, make sure you're having, if you're on iron tablets, for example, make sure you're taking any medication that you need to be. Other than that, make sure you're keeping yourself hydrated as much as you can.
Of course,
So avoiding the high salt foods that we've already said and high
Yes.
sugary foods.
Yeah.
If you can try and drink water regularly in the period where you can eat and drink, that will actually help you feel more hydrated
Yeah.
in the window where you are fasting. And also, it depends on what you eat. So when you have a high watery diet, such as fruits, because they've got lots of fluid in them,
Yeah.
that also helps to keep you hydrated. So try and avoid the saturated, fatty, oily sort of foods, because they will make you feel dehydrated.
Yeah.
So just be careful what you're eating. And if you do decide to fast, as it sounds like you have, just make sure you're doing that safely. Make sure you feel well enough. And if at any point you do feel dizzy, unwell, as far as I'm aware, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but as far as I'm aware, you are allowed to break your fast and
Yes,
eat
that's
if you
right.
need to.
Yes, you're right. 100%. Yeah. Excellent. So great advice there. Now, I've got another one that says, I'm a non-English speaker and feeling isolated during my pregnancy. Does Sunita's support group offer language support for non-English speakers? We did speak about this, but obviously they might have missed it.
Yes, please come along to the support group. You'll meet other women.
Mm-hmm.
You might find another lady there that speaks the same language that you do.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they come, they do actually network and they make friends and they help each other. But
Yeah.
it's good to come to the group because you're getting out of the house, you're getting some fresh air. It's it's just off Dudley Road. A lot of people go and they might do the shopping on the way back home, and it just helps. It really does help. And regarding the language barrier, you will definitely be made to feel comfortable. I'll get an interpreter on the phone if I don't speak your language, and I can assure that you will feel better for coming to the groups.
Brilliant. Okay. I've got one here. I'm a first-time father-to-be. Wow, we've got a father-to-be. It's usually always the mothers, isn't it? First-time father-to-be and feeling overwhelmed. Are there any support services available specifically for fathers?
Yes, we've the local authority have just. It was on the 23rd of March, so they've just done a father session, so any dads-to-be could have gone along to that.
Yeah.
I presume there will be more further dates, so you do need to look out on the council websites for them. But there's fathers groups that fathers can attend. We also do lots of breastfeeding support in Wolverhampton, and if fathers want to go along to that to be able to support their wives and partners, they're allowed, you can go as a couple.
Okay.
The Sahara Maternity Support Group, it's predominantly women, but I'm very aware that, such as yourself, fathers do feel overwhelmed and they might want a session towards the end of pregnancy. So every now and then, I let the women know, because some women don't want to come to a session where there's other men.
Yeah.
So I will purposely put on sessions for the men at the Sahara Maternity Support Group towards the end of your pregnancy, and then we welcome the men to come along, and I will do a session with them. So we talk about how they can look after their wife or partner in labour, and how to look after a newborn baby, how to support your wife later on when she's breastfeeding, how you can be of help, things like skin to skin. There's lots that fathers can do, to help support the mother and the baby. So it's not just all to do with mother, then she has the baby, then she's breastfeeding, and poor dad doesn't get a look in.
Yeah.
It's not like that at all. We're very much trying to involve the whole family, trying to involve fathers, and just, it's great. It's great that you want to take an active role in your baby's life.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, we've only got 40 seconds of the show remaining. So, Sunita, thank you for sharing those insights. And very quickly, just remind everybody about the Sahara Maternity Group, where they meet, what times and where.
Yeah, great. So that's every Monday. It starts at 10 o'clock till midday, and it's at the Bob Jones Community Hub, which is on Bromley Street, WV2 3AS.
Lovely. And to our listeners as well, I just want to say thank you for tuning in. Join me next week for another insightful episode of FYI, where I will be joined by Samantha Ball from Severn Trent Water, who will be discussing ways to save water and money off your bills. Until then, stay informed, stay empowered, and Assalamu alaikum.